All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is just go to our mixer by pressing mix, and you can see that I'm using 3 tracks, and then in the drum track, you could just press mix again to go to your individual pads. I'm just gonna press mix out, and we're just gonna hear how it sounds raw, so there's no effects on it. So right off the back, you can hear that the drums are really overpowering the rest of the track. You could barely hear the bass, and there's a bit of clashing going on in the low end. So the first place I like to start off is with my drums, because in trap, that's pretty much the focal point. I'm just gonna press solo, and then I'm just gonna bring these levels back up to 0. And I'm gonna press mix, and then I'm gonna solo my kicks, and we're just gonna go through. So I actually gonna bring in visual representations just so you guys can really grasp the concept, because it's kind of hard without any visual representation to explain mixing. Just look at the transients, which is the peak of the sounds. You can see how it starts to like curve a bit more. And you can see it's way past 0. But this is not hard clipping that you would have had got on if you did this in the DAW. This is where people like the MPC sound. You can hear how that sounds right there, and you can hear the difference how it sounds right here. Me personally, I don't want to just always clip my converter just to clip it because everybody says so. I still like a clean mix, and I like my kicks in the original form. I don't want my kicks to get rounded off into like a saw wave. Because the more you push it, it's not that intense, but you can hear that the timbre changes a lot. What I'm gonna do is just bring it to a level that I like, that's still high. I could just probably keep it at 0. So now the only thing is, if you keep it at 0, just keep in mind, you have other sounds that you're gonna have to level, and certain sounds may peak a lot, and I'll get more into why that's not good for your master. But essentially, when it comes to mixing, because what you see a lot of people do is like they push up the faders and everything, and then yeah, it may sound good, but when it goes to a mixing engineer or when it goes to another DAW and the person has to record over it, you already master your track. Just for good practice, you want to have a bit of headroom on your master. Now, many people may argue against this and debate, but the choice is yours. I'm not saying either one is wrong. I'm just letting you guys know what I do. I do still want my kicks to be at -9, but I'm not gonna do it from here. I'm gonna actually press mix and go to main. I could have just pressed main and go to that individual pad and just turn it down from here. And I'm choosing to turn it down from here because I'm putting it on screen so that it can sync up to the cue links. And I'm putting it down from here because I want to control the levels before the mixer. So if I go to mix, so around here is good. And just so you guys know, there's many ways to make your drums hit hard, but always keep in mind that some of your drums is already knocking. If I pull up a VU meter, you can already see that it's knocking. And then now I can start bringing in the other sounds. I'm just actually gonna solo this second track, which is my clap. Now, if we look at this clap on a VU meter, it's not really hitting hard. It's only hitting around about -10 dB. Now, if we go to shift and mute and we actually go to our clap, let's just take a look at it. It's not even maxed out where, you know, some trap kits, you know, the waveform is like all the way up here, if you know what I mean, like the peaks are high. If we want to make our drums hit hard, just always remember it's all about adding harmonics to your sound. And that could be through saturation, compression, distortion, and many other techniques. And you could go down the rabbit hole yourself of finding those. You could go to track edit and you could go to effects and then press effects again to get to this screen. And then right where it says soft clipper, you could just pull up the soft clipper. Look at that VU meter. So now that's hidden. I can even max it out. And then what I can do now is go back to the mixer and just turn it down. And I like to use the cue links to control the level. So I'll just put it on pad parameter and all of this will switch to levels. So track 1 will be the kicks, track 2 will be the claps, and so on and so forth. you just go to the next 4 by clicking over on the second cue link. Dum, 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 dum. Let's just go on to the third track, and this is our Congo. Now the Congo is something interesting because if you look at the Congos, the VU is only showing that it's just like the clap. It's hidden around like -8 or 9. But you see it's going all the way past 0. The reason why it's going past 0 is because the peaks are very high. The actual body of the sound is like around like here. Now we're going to get into a bit of dynamics. I'm going to go to the effects. I'm going to use a transient shaper. So we could go in our dynamics section, go to air transient, and then look what happens when I do air transient. Off. You can see right here though, that it's cutting off those peaks. If you want more attack to it, you could just bring up the attack a little bit if you want. Make sure you always switch off from your cue links because you can mess yourself up. Now for this sound, I don't need it to be super loud because frequency wise, it has a lot of like mids and highs. So mids and highs we just perceive louder. So you always have to keep that in mind of how you perceive sound and how people perceive sound. So now we did the steps so that we can level it better with the mix, because here's the thing with peaks. If you have too much peaks in your sound, and I'm not saying all peaks are bad, I'm just saying with the Congos though, you see how low that level was and the peaks was hitting 0. That was a lot of peaks. Peaks are like unwanted volume. If you have so many unwanted volumes, that all adds up into the master, and then you're clipping the master essentially, but you're not even clipping it in a good way. You're clipping it on the unwanted volume versus the body of your sound. Going back to volume, now we could just level that out. So you see, it still sounds good in the mix. And you don't have to get it perfect right now too. You just want to make sure that it's balanced still. And then we have our next one. The Congos is loud in the sense of the frequency. Let's look at the frequency. Yeah, the mid-range, like I said, we perceive mids a lot. That resonance point around like 1,000 hertz, yeah. You turn that up too much, it can become very piercing. And then we have our stumps. Definitely gonna bring that down. And to control the volume, like I said, just hit the cue link. Since we're on number 5, this will be the top one. And then from here, we can just level everything else out because I don't think anything has like crazy peaks or stuff like that. And if you feel like that snap is a bit quiet, just go back to main, track edit, put that soft clipper to it. You don't have to get too crazy. Yep. And then let's bring in our shaker. The shaker could use a bit of soft clipping. Yeah. And then we could just go to our crash. All right, so those are balanced for right now. We could just unsolo this, and then let's solo our 808 real quick. So this is how our 808 sounds right now. In the previous video, I actually went to the effects and added a soft clipper. So a soft clipper, it just brought up the harmonics more to make it kick through in the mix. And I think that's in harmonics section. So this is how it sounds. Just to show you guys, there's many ways to make your sound hit hard. Just like that. One preset. I don't have to tweak presets and get all crazy. If I understand, okay, a soft clipper can be used for that purpose, then I understand I could just go to that anytime I want my drums to hit hard. So I can do that, or I could just go back and set this back to 0 and go to the track edit, turn it up from here. So that's how it would sound when you're clipping the converter. That sounds good to me. I don't have to like go so crazy. You don't have to go so crazy with it. And then we could bring in that sample. Now we're gonna get into the more detail of mixing. You know, this is what's gonna make everything just like fit more better with each other. So the first thing I wanna go over is getting our sample to sound right. And what I mean by that is we're just gonna solo our sample, go to effects. Let's just hear our sample. You can hear that low end, and I want to control that low end by putting it in mono. That's a way that you control low end in the mix, because you don't really want low end in the stereo fill, because that would just muddy up the mix. Go to modulations, go to stereo width, and honestly, the way I would have really went about this is doing a mid-side EQ, but since there's not really a mid-side EQ, and I'm not trying to like do no workarounds when I could just still get a decent result just by turning down the lows. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do, turn down the lows. Now I want you to pay attention to how the lows just kind of come in the center versus wide. Right, if you close your eyes, it definitely helps. So just play it back, close your eyes, and you're gonna feel it, and also you're gonna hear it. And yes, some will say that that will put some of the actual low end of the instruments in mono as well. And yeah, but I'm like, at the end of the day, it's a push and pull kind of thing when it comes to mixing. And I would rather have the bass in this sample tame, especially since this is the only sound within this beat. So you just got to kind of think like that. And then since there's still bass in it, then I will want to use the EQ to cut that out. So a EQ that I like is the para. And why do I want to cut out the low end in the sample? Because I want to make room for my 808 and my kicks. And then let's just go to the second option, high to low cut. Let's just hear how it sounds. Even though on the frequency spectrum, it's already kind of taken out. A lot of lows is already taken out. But we can still clean it up a bit more. So we look at that frequency. And I can sharpen the slope. So it really cuts out the lows. But if I do that, then I kind of just want to wind it back, because I don't want to like take so much lows out of the sample. And the crazy thing about that is when you take away unwanted frequencies and unwanted volume, you perceive your sound a lot better. This is the whole point of taming your peaks. This is the whole point of cutting out unnecessary frequency, because then you get the body of the sound. And then for the highs, we could take out some of the highs so we can make room for the higher drum sounds, like the hi-hats, the crash, you know, a bit of the kicks, to let that shine through. But obviously you don't want to get dramatic, because you can hear it. But you do want to start dramatic and then just kind of A-B it a lot. That's the way you're going to train your ears. As far as if you're not using an app or anything, you could train your ears by just A-B-ing a lot. It's going from like 20, if I was to drop it down to 12 or 11. You just want to make it a subtle difference where it's nothing too crazy, because if it's a subtle difference, that means you're still doing a good job. Because if you look at the frequency, it's still cut off a bit, and we can steep it up if we want to cut off a bit more. And we could always go back to this when we are hearing it in context. That's something you definitely want to hear in context. But for right now, having it right there is decent. And going back to how if it did take out some of the low end in your sample, you can always bring back that warmth feel just by adding a vintage plugin. So my thing is, it's just about knowing your effects, because once you know your effects, then mixing becomes very easy. And you shouldn't just think about things as hard because you don't know. That is just not a proper way to move through life in general. You should always think about things are just new, and you will realize, oh, it wasn't hard. You just had to learn, and you just had to make time take its course. So stop confusing time with being hard, because a lot of people do that. And it's like, if you do that with everything, trust me, things is going to be hard to do. Pull up the MPC 60 because it has warmth. So you see how the sample sounds a bit thin? It brings back that warmth without doing too much, man. And then I'm gonna just skip over to the bass real quick, and I just wanna add like an EQ. I like to use the pair of EQ, like I said. For the 808, I just wanna carve out a bit of that low end. It's just like having little extra items in your room, you know, like people that hoard a lot of items and it's just cluttering space. You need to clean out that, and that's what that's pretty much doing. You don't wanna go too high, just around 30 hertz is fine. And you will hear that it hits even harder. Hear it off. That sounds a lot cleaner now. And we can even do the same with our highs. Because all this information right here, you're not gonna even really hear it. So this is unwanted frequencies that are building up into the mix. So let's try it out. And if we look at the frequency, that clean up all that extra stuff that we don't need for our bass. Like, it's still going to translate well on other devices because you can see that it's going to go from the bass to the low mids and to the mids, bro. That's how you know it's going to translate well on other devices. If your 808 was just only being stopped right here, then yeah, it may not translate that well. It may sound muffled, but we could just mix this in context, unsolo everything. Turn back on our EQ. Yeah, that sounds a bit clean to me. By itself, the 808 didn't really sound that good, but in context, because you gotta always do stuff in context, then you start to see. For the drums, you also wanna think about panning, but keep in mind, let's look at the instruments and also hear. I'm just gonna solo, and I'm also bring up an imager so you guys could get a better idea of what's going on. You can see that straight up the middle, mono. The clap has a bit of stereo because of the reverb. Congo, pretty much mono. Cowbell, pretty much mono. Now, we see how wide the stump is. Now, I probably don't want my stump to be that wide, so I would just go to the stereo width, especially because it has that low end. So I want to put that low end in mono. It's still a bit wide, so I still want to probably bring in a bit of those mids and monos as well. Yeah, you see how things just sound tighter when you bring the low end a bit more? You don't have to do it for every sound, just be mindful. And I could cut out the low end in that. I'm just going to use the pair of EQ again. Look how much information right here. That's taking up the 808 and it's taking up the kicks. That's why your mix is not sounding clean, because you're not taking care of these issues. And yes, it may thin out the sound, but that is the sacrifice so that we can, you know, have a better balanced mix. Like I said, there's ways to bring back that warmth just by using that MPC 60. Pretty much the same thing we did with the sample. And I'm also going to make this more sharp. And you can also cut out a bit of the highs too. You don't really need that. And we could just bring back that warmth. But for this, we don't want to really bring back warmth because it's really sharing the frequency of the 808 and the kick. So that's definitely going to clash. So I would rather just probably use like a SP 1200. I feel like that has a bit more highs. It just fills out the body a bit more. Yeah. And then if you really want to get crazy, you can just put all your drums except for the kick in of submix. So I just went to IO, so I was on effects. I just went to IO and I just switched over one, submix. Put all the drums except for the kicks. All right, so we got that, right? Press mix again. We're just gonna scroll over to this other side, and this is where our submixes are. Just to go back to show you why I'm doing this, look at our individual drum sounds. Look how much low end is in that clap. Congo has low end. Cowbell has low end. That snap. Pretty much every sound except for the crash has low end, and the crash still has a bit of low end maybe. The unseen, don't forget about the unseen frequencies as well. So this is all if you want a super clean mix. This is what you would do, in my opinion. But it just makes sense. Like, this ain't just even my opinion. I don't know why I'm saying that. Like, if you're cutting out unwanted volume and unwanted frequency, then you're cleaning up the space. I could just go to an EQ and just do a low cut. And it don't have to be anything crazy. It could just be like around 30 hertz. And if you want to dial back a bit, dial back. Now, there's only one more thing I would do, and that's sidechain the 808. Since we have that stump and that kick and the 808, it just makes sense that they're fighting for space, so we gotta make something kick through. Quickest way to do this, the key groups is 808. Go to effects. I just wanna put the mother ducker on the 808 because you wanna put the mother ducker on what you wanna have duck, and that should be in dynamics. So put the mother ducker there, and then on the drums, you want to just put the kick. Now, some of you want to be like, oh, why you don't just sidechain the stump as well? Like, dude, you could do all of that. Like, if you have ideas that come to your head that you see me didn't do, that's good. But understand that it's not always necessary. So going back, go to the mother ducker. Now, I'm not going to really go over mother ducker too much, but just understand this is just a compressor. The ratio was already too high. The attack was already too low, 10 milliseconds. No, that's gonna pump it too fast. And the threshold, we just gotta set. But also, what's giving it that grunginess is if we go to our output and go to our volume, we're way over our levels. That's why the mother ducker is sounding that way. So what we're gonna have to do is just level this a bit more. So I could just level the drum track. So I could just bring this down a bit more. Yeah, so I think we can all hear that. Then you can mess with the clipping of your master. So I'm not gonna get too crazy because like I said, I'm already past having any headroom. Other than that, bro, let's just hear the difference. For export, all you have to do is just go to save, audio mix down. Pretty much none of this have to be crazy, bro. This is standard. All these settings are standard. So thanks for watching. I know this was probably a lengthy video and appreciate you guys. Until next time.